Hello everyone, my name is Anthony King, and I'm the director and founder of BRAVE, Black Rights, Activism, Visibility, and Equity. And I want to welcome you all to Be Color Brave. Here today we put together an excellent panel discussion for you all to listen to and get insight from. Please stick around on the back end of the panel discussion because members of BRAVE, we're going to come up and let you guys know a little bit about who we are, some of our goals in the community, and even our future aspirations. But before we get there, let's get started with our panel discussion. Before we get started, I would like for our panelists to tell you all about who they are and a little bit about their background.
Hello, my name is Greg Dickerson. I'm a life design coach, and I originate from Elyria, Ohio, which is just right outside Cleveland, and I've been in Bowling Green since 1985.
My name is Adam Scaff. I'm a police sergeant with the Bowling Green Police Division. I've been employed since 2002. I'm originally from Toledo, Ohio, and just recently I was named as the liaison to communities of color by the Police Division and City Council of Bowling Green.
Hi, I'm Anna Brown. I am originally from Kenton, Ohio, just an hour south of Bowling Green. I serve as one of the NIOT, Not in Our Town representatives, and I have been in the Bowling Green community for over 20 years.
Thank you all panelists. Now the title for our discussion tonight is Be Color Brave. Be Color Brave, this movement was started because a while ago a lot of people were being colorblind. And being colorblind has a very negative connotation. I'll give you guys an example. Everybody in the world usually eats rice. It's true, you guys can look it up. But if I asked you all, how did you make the rice? How did you prepare it? How does your culture affect you preparing the rice? It will be different. Being colorblind is an ineffective way to tackle racism and to affect race and equity in this country. Panel, is being colorblind an effective way? And if not, how so? Any of you can answer.
I think that, like you said, it has a negative connotation. By being blind to it, doesn't respect and appreciate all that goes with diversity and inclusion, and to ignore people's history and what they've experienced doesn't give you a true sense of their value and the struggles that they've been through. So by ignoring that and being blind to it, I think you're missing part of the picture.
Even little children, a lot of times will say things like, oh, kids don't see color. They absolutely do. They see difference immediately. The difference between what children do and what adults do is children do not assign value to the differences. They notice them and then they move forward. And that's really important as we're talking about what it means to be color brave.
I think for me, color brave means essentially embracing each other's uniqueness and differences. And when we refer to colorblind, for me the connotation is you're in the dark, and we don't want people to be in the dark. We want people to be in the light, to be able to see the differences and to be able to unite. So for me, the term color brave really illuminates our differences and allows us to shine as individuals.
Thank you, panel. Words matter. The word phrase, diversity and inclusion. These words are often coupled together. Is there a difference between diversity and inclusion? And does that difference matter?
Yes. I mean, there's a huge difference between diversity and inclusion. And diversity is the who and I guess the what you can say, but inclusion is how are people feeling comfortable in that particular space. So you can have an office full of diverse individuals, but are they feeling included? Are they feeling welcome? Is that space that is allegedly diverse, is it welcoming to each and every individual in that organization or in that office? So when we look at diversity, you can have a very diverse organization, but if the structure or the leadership is not reflective of the people that are at the lower level and are not feeling welcome, then you're going to have some problems within that organization. So today we need to foster diversity and also inclusion. You can't really have an effective organization without both of them being merged together.
And inclusion entails much more than just having the people in the space. That's what the diversity piece is. Inclusion entails having your voice being heard, having that matter in that space, having it carrying equal weight to other folks who are sitting at the table. And so it goes back to the old saying is like, if you don't have a seat at the table, bring a folding chair. And so when we're talking about inclusion, we want to make sure that we're making space at the table or that we're growing the table so that everybody feels that their voice is heard and that it matters.
I think to go along with that, I think the big difference that I see is that inclusion is about the experience. As both the other panelists said, you know, it's easy to have a diverse group, but if people are not having the same experience, then what's the point? So in regards to this community and other communities, I think the important thing is that to be diverse, but not only to be diverse, but to be inclusive so that everyone in the community, no matter where they come from or what color they are or sex or sexual orientation, that they have the same experience and feel welcome.
Thank you, panel. Our next topic is education. What are some ways that educators can promote being color brave in the K-12 learning level and even higher institutional learning?
I think it's really important to understand that there's more than a single story. Every story has multiple angles. Just like if you view an accident, where you're standing on the street matters, where your vantage point was matters. And so making sure that when we're starting, even with our young children, telling more than the single story, which is a great TED Talk that you can look up on YouTube. I think that it's really critical for starting off our children very, very young, talking about these issues, making sure that they understand these issues from different viewpoints, because if a child is young enough to experience racism, they're old enough to be able to talk about it as well. And so whether we start in the K through 12 system, I think starting in junior high, high school is too late. I think that we have to start addressing the issues now if we want to see things get better.
I agree. I think we have to start early. The earlier the better. What are some ways that educators, particularly in K through 12, can actually affect change or do something to strengthen, young adults' ability to embrace difference? And the first thing that came to my mind was when I was growing up, we had pen pals, and we had pen pals from the neighboring cities. We had pen pals from different states, and I was thinking, could we foster an atmosphere where people are getting to know each other virtually? So maybe you have a friend internationally, or somewhere from a different country, and allow them to start talking and start communicating and start asking questions and learning and being curious. And I think if we, because kids, they're curious by nature, and they want to ask questions and they want to learn, and we need to develop that curiosity within them. And I think if we start there and providing an opportunity for them to open up and expand their horizon, that's what education is all about. And I think that would just be a great start for them to really look at others, and then being able to look at themselves and say, you know what? We're a lot alike, we're a lot alike, and I think that's a great thing.
I also think it's really important for educators to look at their source material and make sure that they're hearing the different voices through their source material, because it's great to tell stories about people from different backgrounds, but if only one group is telling the story, again going back to that danger of a single story, you're not getting the full picture. So making sure that we have authors from different marginalized and minoritized backgrounds, not just racially and ethnically, but also looking at sexuality, looking at religion, looking at all the aspects of diversity. The more that we're able to openly learn and the more that we're able to openly talk, the better and the faster we'll grow, and the better and faster things will change.
Anna, I remember you sharing with me that the community you come from isn't the most diverse or inclusive community. So what type of impact do you think that had as you, as a child?
It had a huge impact on me. My sister and I were just talking about this the other day, actually. Like I said, I'm from Kenton, Ohio, which is an hour south of Bowling Green. Not where the Football Hall of Fame is, just right down I-75 and State Route 68. My town is about 8,000 people, and it's the biggest town for 30 miles in any direction. And when we were growing up, everybody who was brown was either related to me or went to my church. So it was really a small community of color. I was one of, I think, 6 people of color in my graduating class of 165. And so my experience was very isolated. And growing up in an environment like that, what it does is it somewhat desensitizes you to the impacts that people who are not in that community feel. So it was nothing for me to see Confederate flags. It was nothing for me to hear racial slurs. So as I was growing up, even though that's not normal, it was my normal. And so it takes sometimes for students coming into BG to say to me, oh my gosh, I saw this Confederate flag. Oh my gosh, somebody yelled out a racial slur at me as I was walking down the street, for me to go, oh yeah, that's not supposed to be happening. That's not right. And so I think that it's really critical, again, to recognize, we all come from different backgrounds. We all have different exposures. And the more we broaden our exposure, the more that we branch out, the more we're able to realize, hey, what I grew up with isn't necessarily the right way, and it definitely isn't the only way.
Thank you, Anna. Our next topic of discussion will be policing. And so, Adam, I'm going to start with you. What type of feelings do you get when you hear the phrase, defund the police?
I don't have a personal reaction necessarily that is positive or negative in one sense or the other. I look at it as a slogan, and I understand what's going on in the country right now and some of the frustrations that have brought to the forefront some other issues that we as police agencies need to deal with. And I continue to say that we need to be held accountable for our actions. We need to be responsible for what we do, and we can always get better. I think some people get too much caught up in the semantics of defund the police, as opposed to maybe what the underlying issues are and what essentially the people that are saying that are really looking for. I think what they're looking for is for the police to have interactions with the communities that they serve, and that everyone has that same experience, like I talked about earlier. And defunding the police, when I hear it, I think what they're asking for is not only reform, but to maybe change or reconceptualize what the police are responsible for and what we should be doing. The chief of police here in Bowling Green always says that we're not here to police the community, we're policing for the community. And it's important that what we're doing is looking at the priorities of the community that we serve and serve those priorities. And so if the priorities of the community change and they want to reimagine what some of the things that we're responsible for, I think we're open to that. At the same time, when I first got hired in Bowling Green, one of the things that was always told to me is that you have a lot of job security, because I don't envision at any point in our society or any time in my lifetime that the police aren't going to be necessary. At the same time, I'm not naive enough to think that we can't get better at what we do and that we can't make changes so that we see less issues that we're seeing on the news. And we want to be better trained. We want to make better decisions. There's not a single officer that I work with that doesn't want to de-escalate whenever humanly possible. The last thing that we want to do is use force on anybody, and the last thing that we want to do is end up violating someone's rights and ending up on the news. We understand and appreciate that we're held to a higher standard, and we're okay with that. It's our responsibility, it's incumbent upon us to make sure that we're doing the necessary things.
Anna or Greg, what are your first thoughts or opinion when you hear the term defund the police?
So for me, I think Adam really kind of nailed it. It's not abolishing the police, it's not getting rid of the police, it's reallocating some of the resources that are maybe excessive, not in Bowling Green, because I think in Bowling Green we run a pretty tight ship, but there are police departments that have tanks. Why? Why does a police department need a tank? If we could take the funding that is going to buy this military equipment and shift it toward other public services, social services, people who are then equipped to handle mental health crises that could go on calls with the police, that would help with the de-escalation process. That's what people are talking about when they're talking about defunding the police. They're talking about taking some of the burden that our police departments carry and some of the weight that they carry that they really shouldn't have to, and putting the resources behind the burdens and the jobs that really belong with other folks. And so that way everybody is actually being able to work within their skill set and their forte so that we don't have to worry about as many negative situations occurring.
If I can interject for 1 second as well, I wanted to add something to that along the lines of what she just pointed out, is that we have so many hats that we're responsible for wearing. And there's an old saying that you can be a jack of all trades but master of none. And so on the belt that I wear working midnight shift, I have everything from a firearm to gloves to a mask to provide CPR to a tourniquet to OC spray to a baton to a taser, and now with the pandemic, we have a mask and all these other things. We have Narcan in case somebody overdoses. So we have all these things that we're juggling, and then if the responsibilities continue to be put on us and placed on us, unfortunately, at times there's going to be mistakes made, and when we make mistakes, we've got to be held responsible for those mistakes. But I think what she's getting at is that it reallocate some of those responsibilities. Unfortunately, in most communities at 3 in the morning, if someone is in crisis and they're walking down the middle of the street and they're not clothed and it's the middle of the winter, the first place someone is going to call is the police department. We are there 24/7. We are seen as kind of the face of government at all hours. And so I think what's important is that we have enough training so that we can deal with the initial assessment of those things and get the necessary people there. Because I think that no matter how much money we throw at the problem, whether it be mental health or drug use or overdoses, we're not going to be able to solve it. So we have to manage it as best we can. I don't envision at any point where we're going to have 24/7 mental health services where someone is sitting at a station waiting to be called. What's more likely is what we do here in Bowling Green, where we're the initial responder, and then we do contract with a place that we can call at 3 in the morning and have someone come speak to someone who's in crisis. So we have to have realistic expectations, but there's always ways to improve, and that's what we'd like to continue to do.
Thank you, Adam. As the police liaison, you are supposed to be the connection from the police department to the community. I believe it's unfortunate that we have to assign someone such as to a title. But as a liaison, what type of changes do you want to see in overall policing in America or in your community? Are there any changes that you want to see?
Well, let's start with our community. As Anna pointed out, I believe we do a pretty good job when we run a pretty tight ship. That's not to say that we don't make mistakes and there aren't things that we can improve upon. obviously the reason that we're sitting here today is because some members of the community feel like they don't have the same experience that maybe someone like myself has had in this community. I've had a wonderful experience in Bowling Green since I moved here. I love living here, but I'm not naive enough to think that everyone has that same experience. So as part of my job as the liaison is to kind of be a point of contact for people who may not feel comfortable contacting the police, and to build relationships with different community groups and individuals in the community, and hopefully put them at a place where they feel more comfortable addressing the concerns that they have. Because I know over the past couple months, it's been pointed out that when people have certain problems, at times they don't feel comfortable calling the police department. They're not sure who they're going to get, who they're going to speak with. And so hopefully, the position that I have, I can act as someone who maybe already has an existing relationship through meetings that we go to or events like this where maybe someone now sees my face and maybe understands that, I'm a human, there's someone behind that uniform, and to not use that as a barrier. So kind of my goal is to kind of break down some of the barriers that exist between different groups and the police. And we understand that, there's always ways to improve. And we want to do whatever we can, like I talked about earlier, to make the priorities of the community the priorities of our organization, so that everybody has a good experience in the community, and hopefully attract more people to continue coming to the community and coming to the university, and having a wonderful experience.
Thank you, Adam. Greg, as a black man in America, and specifically in a majority white town like Bowling Green, do you want the police to be colorblind?
No, not at all. I want the police to be able to see me as an African American male in Bowling Green. I don't want them to run away. I don't want them to look at me differently. I want them to see me as who I am. And when we start looking and saying, I don't see color, that's extremely problematic, and because you're not addressing the situation at hand. And the situation at hand is that, yes, I am different. Yes, this is the black skin that I have. I can't change it. I can't do anything about it. So see me for who I am as an individual. And that's probably the biggest thing that I'm trying to stress, is to see me as an individual, see me as a person who is part of the community. Okay, I'm part of this community, and I'm trying to enjoy the freedoms that this community affords me. And I would think anyone would want to be in a position and feel respected. And as an individual, as a black person, I want to feel respected. And so, this color blindness does not resonate with me at all. It does not resonate with me. And so when we hear people say, well, Greg, I never saw you as a black person. And I'm like, really? I mean, well, yes, I am a black person, and it's okay. It's okay that I'm black. Okay, why? Don't be afraid. Let's talk. Let's dialogue. And so, I think it's problematic, extremely problematic.
I attended a seminar with Reverend Dr. Jamie Washington, who is an outstanding educator on issues of inclusion, and he was talking about how people see him, and he asked the crowd, he's like, how do you see me? And everyone in the crowd was saying things like, oh, you're tall, you're handsome, have intelligent eyes, and all these wonderful things. He's like, okay, so if you didn't know that I was the presenter at this forum, and I walked into the room, picked up this lady's purse, and walked out, when the police came, how would you describe me? Would you say, oh, he was tall, he was handsome, he had intelligent eyes, or would you say, the big black man took my purse? And we all laughed, but it's true. He said, so if you see me as a big black man when I take your purse, then you see me as a big black man when I'm your doctor, when I'm your lawyer, when I'm your teacher, when I'm your neighbor. It's what you do with that information that matters. And that was one of the most powerful lessons that I ever had.
Thank you. Adam, since you've taken your position as being the police liaison, how has this experience been for you? What type of things have you learned that you would like to share to other communities and their police departments?
I think the most pleasant thing that I've learned since starting this position is that there's a whole lot of people in this community that care about this community, from all different walks of life and backgrounds and ages and colors and religions and sexual orientation, that the vast majority of this community wants the best for this community. I've been, I don't say bombarded, but I've been pleasantly surprised with the amount of feedback that I've got from different organizations and people and members of the community, even people that I wouldn't necessarily sit down and meet with, but somebody that I just saw on the street or somebody that knows who I am coming up and talking to me about seeing an article about Brave or the city council meeting and my position. So it's been a good experience. And so far, I think the biggest thing that I've learned is that, honestly, I've lived here almost 18 years, and like I mentioned before, I've had an amazing experience, and I work with amazing people at an amazing department for a great city. But there's people who haven't had that same experience that I've had, and it's disheartening on one side, but at the same time, I know that the majority of people that I talk to want to make sure that everyone has that same experience, and we're going to do whatever it takes with the police department, and the city is committed to doing whatever's necessary to make sure that we're not just diverse, but that we're inclusive, and that we have things in place to make sure that we're addressing our issues when we do have issues, because we're not naive to the fact that no matter how much training we have and how many meetings I go to and how many people I speak to, we're still going to make mistakes. We're just hoping to reduce those mistakes and make sure that the mistakes aren't major mistakes, and we're going to learn from the mistakes. So I think the biggest thing that I've learned so far is that I just need to be open. I need to be ready to listen and to learn. But as I've also told my bosses, and they've told me, that we need to do more than listen and learn. We need to take action where it's available. Those changes aren't going to be overnight. We're not going to be able to fix any issues we have in this community with any agency or any agency across the country overnight. So we're committed to the process. We're committed to listening and learning. But more importantly, we're committing to changing where it's necessary. At the same time, I got to say that I think I work for a great department, and I work with great officers. But at the same time, we know there's always ways to improve. And so if people aren't having the same experience that I've had, we're going to do whatever we can to make sure that everyone feels welcome and included in this community.
Thank you, Adam. I want to target this question to Greg and Anna. What are some ways that you believe the local law enforcement here, or even law enforcement in this country, can better help protect our Black community and or work against police brutality?
I think Adam touched upon it, and also Anna. They were talking about defunding the police as training. I think training is critical. I came to Bowling Green State University, and I got my degree in law enforcement. And so for several years, I worked in law enforcement. And when I look at some of the videos from some of the incidences that have taken place within our country, the first thing that comes to my mind is, why was this officer terrified? Why was this officer scared? Why was this officer shooting the gun at this particular time? And I've talked to some of my other officers, some of my friends who happen to be officers, and all of them, at least a lot of them, have said, the training has to be there. And you have some of these officers, they may take just a simple test, and next thing you know, they're given a badge. But their mental stability, their backgrounds, their psychological background, and so forth, has not been addressed. And then you put them in a very in a situation that requires them to think quickly and think on their feet in a moment's time. It's very important that the training is vital for the safety of this nation. So.
If I can interject real fast before Anna continues with that, I just want to assure everyone that's watching that the City of Bowling Green, in their hiring practices, do some of the things that he just spoke about. We do have a psychological assessment. In addition to that, we require some education. After that, if you're not certified as a law enforcement officer in the state of Ohio, or depending upon your experience, you're sent to an academy for, when I went, was I believe 17 consecutive weeks. I think they've expanded it to 21 or 22 since then. In addition to that, we have not nonstop training, but we have a fair amount of training that we do not only annually, but sometimes quarterly, and we have trainings throughout our roll calls to try to avoid some of the situations that he's talking about, because we are put in very stressful situations, and it's very important that we use and fall back on our training, and that we're trained properly. And something that I see, and this is me speaking as just an officer and as myself, in the past, one of the big things for law enforcement was to be trained to kind of be a warrior mentality. And I believe what the future holds is that the police are going to go back to more of a guardian mentality, try to find the sweet spot of, we have to understand that there's dangers in our job, and we have stressful situations, but at the same time, the vast majority of what we're doing is protecting, and to be a guardian as opposed to a warrior. That said, we have to be prepared for worst case scenario. So unfortunately, the society we live in, there's going to be times where we're going to have to use force, and we want people to understand that it's our goal with the City of Bowling Green and the Bowling Green Police Division to use force as an absolute last resort. And I think that our numbers bear that out over the time that I've been here. But what he said is very important, that a lot of it comes back to training, not only getting the training, but what training you're receiving, and then not just getting the training and forgetting about it, but to continue to train on the training that you get, and make sure that you're doing the refresher courses, and that you're doing it, not that, well, I completed that class 12 years ago, I'm good now. It's something that has to be done over and over, almost like a muscle memory. The more you do something, the better you get at it.
I think also, in addition to all of what's been said, is that we have to get people out of their silos. I'm a rare case. I was born in an environment with people who were not like me. Most people are in environments where they are growing up with people like them. And if they don't get the exposure to people who are unlike them, then their knowledge, and I'll use that loosely, is based on what we hear in media, what we see on TV, what we hear from other people, and those are almost always steeped in stereotype and exaggeration. And if we have a police force that is largely white, that has never interacted on a regular routine basis with people of color before, then they're going to see people of color as the stereotypes were portrayed on TV. And so what we have to do is get people out of their silos and find ways for folks to go into the communities where, yeah, it's going to be a little uncomfortable when you're in the minority for the first time, but it's imperative to understand that we're all people, and that, yes, we have our differences and our differences matter, but there are also some commonalities there. And so if you start to see me as a person rather than as a statistic or as a race or as a gender or as a sexuality, but you see me as a person, then you're going to think twice about how you react toward me when the situation is a little bit more dire. So in addition to all the other trainings that we need to do, we really need to focus on how do we get people out of their silos and get to know each other on an individual basis. And then we can start addressing the systemic issues that underlie all this, because just addressing people on a one-on-one level isn't going to solve the problems, because as long as we don't address the systemic issues, there are always going to be problems, no matter if everybody stops being racist tomorrow.
Mm-hmm. Anna, you say systemic. Could you dive a little bit deeper into what do you mean by systemic issues in policing?
So not just policing, just in the way we function. There are 4 different kinds of racism. There is the individual racism that a person has within themselves. There's interpersonal racism that happens when people share jokes or tell stories that are prejudiced. And again, I don't mean this to be just racism, any ism, sexism, homophobia, Islamophobia, all of those things, anti-Semitism. They're all part of this systemic issue. So when we have the individual level, we have the interpersonal level with the jokes and the stories. Then we have the institutional level, and that's when the individual institutions like schools, like churches, like police forces, have policies and procedures that are steeped in racism or any sort of ism. So an example that we use frequently is the young man who wasn't allowed to graduate because he had dreadlocks. The school said either cut your hair or you don't get to graduate. And that's one of those situations where, because it was a school policy, the people who were enforcing it could say, I was just following policy, without looking at the negative impact that had on the student. And then there's the systemic issue of racism, which is just how it's steeped in our society and how it happens in everyday activities that we don't even necessarily realize or recognize, because it was part of the foundation of the country. I worked with Seth Butler down at the University of Findlay, and he did a great analogy about a house and how the house is built. And if the foundation of the house is shaky, then the rest of the house is going to be shaky. And if the house is built solidly, then the rest of the house is going to be solid. Well, when the foundation of the nation is steeped in these isms, then that's going to seep up and it's going to affect all of what we do in the country. And so we have to really look at what systems are being allowed to remain in place that are impacting us in a negative way, and try to do corrections to those systems. And this is stuff that has happened over hundreds of years. So it's not stuff that we're going to be able to fix tomorrow. It's going to take time, it's going to take effort, it's going to take patience, and it's going to take energy. But it's going to take that, it also has to take that commitment from everybody to address the issues.
Thank you so much, Anna. I want to thank the community for tuning in today to our panel discussion. I would also like to thank our panelists. I also want to encourage you to stick around for a bit, because after this short break, Brave is going to come and give you just a little bit of overview knowledge about who we are, what we are in the community, and some of our future aspirations. So stick with us. Thank you. Hello, you all. Thank you so much for staying with us. Now, I've brought up some of Brave team members, and we're going to tell you just a little bit about who we are. So, first, I'm going to give you guys some history about how we were founded. I organized a peaceful protest in Bowling Green, which 500 people showed out to. After this, a couple of my friends, we got together and we wanted to do something else to make sure that this momentum didn't die down. So then we planned a Juneteenth event, which was amazing. We had music artists, food, and people dance. It was an amazing time. After that, we thought it was something else that we should be doing in the community. So we came together, we put our heads together, and we came up with BRAVE, Black Rights, Activism, Visibility, and Equity. And now, Bryce is going to tell you a little bit about what are some things that we're doing now.
Hey, my name is Bryce Walker. I'm the Director of Visual Branding for Brave. I'm also sort of like Creative Director for Brave. Currently, our current events, after wrapping up the election and our efforts at getting people registered and voted, we're in the process of keeping people informed, keeping people active. We're also trying to better establish ourselves to better support the community. As the end of October, we were now recognized as an official nonprofit organization according to Ohio. So that's just a great step, just moving forward. We're also in the process of getting our 501(c). As an organization, we try to be as responsive as we can to the needs of the community, whether it's just simply spreading awareness or using the resources that we have to help people. After getting our 501(c), that would just open up a lot more opportunities and a lot more resources for us to finally be able to fund and to put together a lot of the projects and ideas that we have. Of these projects, we know would just have a positive impact on the community, just beneficial to the community. Other current things, other than Brave, would just be just keeping the presence there in the city of Bowling Green, keeping the movement going. Yeah, and I'm gonna pass it to Najwa, another director of Brave, and she's gonna kind of give you some more information about future events.
Hi. Here at Brave, we are more than just an organization with many activists coming together with a common goal. We're more than that. We're a family. And in doing so, with keeping the family orientation that we have, we do have an understanding of many different things that our people do face, especially with living here in Bowling Green. And so, with that being said, we do have many different goals and aspirations that we plan to stay committed to in order to help our people to be more embracive and to definitely embrace our culture even more. There's a few things that we will be doing, of course, keeping up the tradition of the Juneteenth event that we did do earlier this year, as well as having an African Arts Festival, a Black Music Festival, and other various events that will bring a sense of togetherness as well as fellowship. Other things that we will be getting into, we'll definitely get into partnering with the Chamber of Commerce, so that way we are able to start grants to help with opening Black businesses, as well as making sure to keep the sustainability. So with that, we will also offer diversity consulting services to other organizations. We will absolutely make sure that we stay committed to making sure that our people are very, very comfortable amongst this community.
Thank you all. As an organization, we operate out of 4 pillars. One is community outreach, which is where we're going to do the events like a Juneteenth event, an African Arts Festival, maybe a Black Music Festival, an African Music Festival, a Black Business Expo. Another of our pillars is actually business, is where we're going to invite more businesses to Bowling Green, invite them to open up shop. And like Najwa, my team member, mentioned, we want to create grants. We want to get donations to create grants to be able to help fund the Black businesses and help them actually open up and have sustainability in life. Our other focus is political. or civic engagement is where we want to meet with local officials like the police liaison, like the mayor, like the Chamber of Commerce, and really bring Black issues and Black concerns up. I find this important because oftentimes in majority white towns like Bowling Green, the Black population in those towns oftentimes get overlooked. And so their concerns never get brought up in the local political scheme of things. Thank you all for tuning in to Brave's panel discussion. This will not be the last program that we have. So please stay tuned to our Facebook accounts, follow our Instagram and our Twitter to stay tuned to other programs we may have throughout this year and years to come. I appreciate you all and thank you for your time. Have a great night.